There's so much care in each of your plays to the world of the play, the tone, and just sort of the parameters of the world seem very carefully constructed, and everything feels very authentic. And even though it's a very specific world unto itself, it seems to me that's the danger when you have the opening up, when you have the sort of tendencies or impulses to make it cinematic, is how to find it.
Well, it's the wrong understanding of the word cinematic.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That cinematic does not mean it's and the movies can do that, but they also go into behind the eyes. Yes.
I thought the solution you found in 6 Degrees, though, of keeping the storytelling within the context of the movie, so that you're not breaking the fourth wall, but you're having the storytelling be a part of.
But it was finding a naturalistic equivalent for that.
I thought it worked beautifully.
Yeah.
It worked beautifully.
I felt so at home with it. I mean, I knew where I was. When Stockard came into the play very late, and she said to me, why am I talking to the audience? Who are they? I said, they're your best friends. They're your 3 a.m., 4 a.m. in the morning friends, people that you call up and you talk to. They are your friends. And I realized when it came time to do the screenplay that that's exactly how I could maintain the directed address to the audience. We saw them in their social world, and then literally, when the people say, "Oh, they're dining out on that story," they literally were dining out on that story. So we saw the places they kept getting invited to kept getting better and better as the story kept getting more and more complicated. More and more people kept hearing about it, and so that problem of direct address to the audience, which is so beleaguered and sort of shot the screenplay of House of Blue Leaves in the foot, because I could never really solve that problem. There's so much audience address in House of Blue Leaves to the audience, where the people on stage are trying to get the audience to side with them on their side of the story. So what I was happy about was I was able to protect the direct address to the audience by locating it in a naturalistic setting.
So Donald, your plays, it doesn't have that same kind of theatrical devices as the direct address. It's a little bit more in the naturalistic realm.
Dinner with Friends, I felt could only work on HBO, but it sort of got out of my hands very quickly. For me, one of the joys of the film was, because the play is in, I don't know, 7 scenes or something like that. I of course could open it up somewhat and use the house, use the environments. I was not going to open up to the extent to which there would be backstory and all that. I wasn't interested in that. I really wanted to produce the integrity of these conversations, but also give it a kind of, forgive me, a kind of Bergman-esque feel to it. And one of the things that I was so excited, meaning that it's a lot of talk, it's a lot of intense interaction, and there's not a lot of exterior.
So was it for the Bergman of Scenes from a Marriage, that kind of?
Yes, very much like that. I thought it could have been an American Scenes from a Marriage. And one of the things that I was able to do in the screenplay was use the children in ways that I simply could not on stage. The children are relegated to recorded voices. But I, in my screenplay, developed them somewhat. So there were several scenes involving the children that I thought really fleshed out the story, I thought in a very moving way. I just thought it was the other element that I could not really express on stage. My director really had no patience for children, it turned out. It is very much my script, which was shot. There were some arbitrary and shocking things that were done to the script. For instance, there's the long scene in the second act between the two men, which is sort of the 11 o'clock number, if you will. Of course, it was shorter and it broken into several different sequences for the purposes of the film, but it was still a long dialogue scene. And in those days, they were fax machines, and I had asked the script supervisor to send me the changes that were made, and she did, and these pages
So,
of
wait, so changes were made.
changes were made, some of which I participated in. Not all of them, it turned out.
You weren't there for the shoot,
That's another story.
but you weren't there.
I would have been. I was willing to be. But anyway, the pages start coming out of my fax machine, and I suddenly see interior men's room. And I'm thinking, what do I have in the men's room? Well, it turns out that my director decided, because the scene was too long, that he would chop it in half and have the bulk of it, sort of the big stuff, happen in the men's room.
I have to say, I did wonder about that.
Yeah, that's not me. And I
No,
was
no,
completely.
We'll get back to some of that.
Well, I'll elaborate.
Yes.
I need some
Still
alcohol,
feeling
though.
some-
But,
And talking about the adaptation of Rabbit Hole, Nicole and I talked a lot about how to open it up, and what that play had on its side is a fairly extensive offstage life. The play did take place in a house with 5 characters, but those characters were often coming in from a scene that had just happened at the supermarket, or they were talking about a support group, and why Nicole's character hated a support group. And in the play, it's hinted that the husband might be having an affair, and all sorts of things like that. That when it came time to write the screenplay, I was actually thrilled to abandon the play in some ways. I mean, a lot of the play ended up back in, but go to all those places that I knew that were fully realized in my head, but were never on stage. And I went to the support group, and I saw that scene in the supermarket, and the plot with the husband having an affair, that part, it became actually a backbone of the plot. And so Aaron Eckhart's character had a parallel storyline in the movie that John Slattery's character didn't really have on Broadway. The stage play was really about a woman contending with the death of her child, and the movie is about a couple contending with the death of the child. There's a lot of stuff that was hinted at that became fully fleshed in the film that helped tell the story in a completely different way.
Let me ask specifically in the film adaptation, which has a little more structural rearranging, and
Yeah.
you know, Nicole Kidman in the movie character Becca goes out and seeks the
boy. Yeah.
Was that internally guided from you, that you wanted her to be a little bit more proactive, or what was the process for changing that?
I wanted to make her more active and more cinematic. It just seemed like
it was a good choice.
yeah, and I do sort of wish I had that in the play, actually, because she's a more active character in the movie. And what it also did, there are lots of great things that happen in the movie, just as byproducts. It added this level of mystery that the play didn't have. In the play, the boy comes out and says, dear Mr. and Mrs. Corbett, I'm sorry for what happened. Essentially, he's apologizing for being the driver of the car that ran over the boy. In the movie, she happens to see this kid in a school bus and begins trailing him. And we don't know who he is. Or why she's trailing him. She seems a little bit crazy, and she stalks him for 20 minutes of the movie before we have any idea who he is. And
How did she recognize him? Refresh my memory.
He was there. She was there when the boy was run over, so she remembers him from the event. And so it added this great level of intrigue that isn't in the play at all, and I think made it more cinematic and made her character more active and all the good things that you want in a screenplay.
And was that something that sort of that came out when you were thinking about the outline or generally the story of the screenplay?
Yes, because I tried to be really strict about it, and I broke it down and said, okay, if I'm going to write a conventional screenplay, what is the structure? And of course, it's not a 2-act structure the way it is in theater. It's a 3-act structure. And where would those beats go? And generally you get yourself in the protagonist's seat and you say, how do we activate her? What does she want here? What does she discover there? How are the stakes raised? All this stuff that everybody knows that I don't really think about as much when writing a play, and maybe I should, but it molded her character in a really useful way.
So we were talking earlier that there had been an offer on House of Blue Leaves again when they did the revival. You had another opportunity to...
When it opened in '86, there was a revival. We got, luckily, with the money I made from Atlantic City, my lawyer bought back the rights to House of Blue Leaves from Carlo Ponti, so I owned it again. And so when it was revived, we got offer a big movie sale for it. And I was so excited, although dreading it again, but I was just excited. And I had a wonderful agent, again, Sam Cohn, whom I miss tremendously, who died a few years ago. And Sam said, John, you can make a lot of money from this, and I can get you a lot of money for this, but all you'll have is a bad movie. This cannot make a good movie. It's just the theatrics of the play cannot be transferred onto the screen. What I'm going to say, forget the money and do it on great performances at PBS, and you'll have something, you'll make no money, and you'll have something you're proud of. And I took his advice, and it was the right choice. And that's an agent at his best, where the agent is protecting the so-called property.
Yes, irrespective of the 10% of.
And I saw that production in high school, on TV, and said, I want to do that.
Hey,
Honestly.
that's pretty good.
Right for television?
No, that's true.